Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
What's up, everybody? This is your co-host, Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average podcast-producing badass.
I'm John Thomas. Some would say that I go a little too far with my love of all things horror, paranormal, and meta. But I say, talk nerdy to me, and I'm all yours.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our horror lovers out there? In today's episode, we'll be discussing all things Goosebumps. What makes this series so popular? Join us along with returning special guest host BJ Segura and special guest Goosebumps Gary to find out more.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more. Bring us back, John Thomas!
Welcome back, everybody. Like Ashley said, BJ, our special guest host, is back with us. Hello, BJ.
Hello, what up, what up?
And we got Goosebumps Gary to talk about Goosebumps with us. Hello, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Hell yeah.
Oh, welcome, Goosebumps Gary. Like, that's quite a name to come out the gate swinging with, right? Like, that carries expectations that you are our Goosebumps connoisseur. Are you ready to take on that role?
Prepare to be disappointed.
So you fit right in then. That's what she said. Okay, so.
Hold on. Before you go any further, I got to ask, how do you know Gary?
I knew you were going to ask. So TikTok. No, I'm just kidding. This is not a TikTok story.
For once.
For once, I did not find somebody on TikTok or Facebook. Gary, how do we know each other?
I mean, we met kind of sort of through work, and we have become fast friends. I mean, that's the short version.
That's the short version.
Nobody likes the short version. Gary and I, we traveled the world
Yes.
of the convention circuit together. A lot of people that have listened know that I am in the convention world, and as is Gary. Sorry if I'm doxing you there, but did I use that word right? Am I hip? He and I, we're badasses at what we do, and we're actually a dream team. We work really well together.
It's true. Arguably the best.
Yeah.
And if anyone else is listening, I don't care.
I love it.
We are the best. But we discovered that while working together, you talk to your coworkers, and not only did we discover we're fucking friends, we're not coworkers, we're badass friends.
100.
We also love Goosebumps.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. So, Gary is all things like 90s. And so he and I dork out on you name it in the 90s. Fresh Prince, like what Living Single? Because we are living single.
I haven't seen that show in forever. Holy crap.
It holds up.
And it does hold
Nice.
up. So we're uber 90s dorks. With that said, we discovered our love for Goosebumps.
Yeah. And we decided we love it so much, let's just make a show out of it.
That's right. So for those that don't know, Gary and I are actually starting a Goosebumps podcast, and we are rereading the Goosebumps books and watching the ones that have corresponding episodes and just totally like nerding out on them. Now, the funny thing is anybody that goes and listens to that one, you're going to get a little bit of a different side to me because it's family friendly.
Ish.
So my mouth is cleaned up. I don't make dirty jokes. Like, say it ain't so. And if I do accidentally make a dirty joke, Gary edits it out.
Not always. Sometimes
That's a lot of editing.
Yeah. You still supplement.
I'm just
sometimes.
teasing.
aren't there sometimes dirty jokes and stuff in the Goosebumps? There's got to be something in there somewhere.
Not that I've experienced yet. We're still pretty new on this journey.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't caught any. I'm sure I can make anything into a dirty joke, but when your protagonists are 11, I just feel like that's
Just a
wrong.
little bit, yeah, a little bit.
So, I mean, and let's jump into it. Goosebumps. What is Goosebumps?
Well, it's a book series created by R.L. Stine, and it ran all throughout the 90s and even on through today in some form or fashion. So, I mean, there were Goosebumps, there were Goosebumps 2000, more stories to give you Goosebumps, and a lot of other titles that I don't know off the top of my head.
And R.L. Stine, he is a real person. He is not Nancy Drew, the author of Nancy Drew. Carolyn, what is it? Carol Keen? Carolyn Keen?
Sure.
Something like that. Because fun fact, she is actually not one person. They had authors writing under that name to write the Nancy Drew books. Whereas R.L. Stine actually wrote, at least the first 63. 63,
There was a
65.
lot.
Wow. There's
Three?
there's that many?
63, yeah. Of the
And
original.
just the
Yeah.
first, just the original releases.
Yeah, he was cranking these things out one a month, which is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, you read the books and it's not rocket science, but still, that's impressive.
Ouch?
um,
Question mark? Like,
I don't mean it's not rocket science like to write a book. I mean like the subject matter was light ish and entertaining that, I don't think he had to do too much out of his realm. And they're quick reads if you're an adult. I think they're great reads if you're a kid who doesn't get scared easily.
Well, right, and the target audience, right? Like you're writing for them, which is the kids who go to the Scholastic Book Fair, stuff like that, right? Like that's how I discovered Goosebumps. It was amazing. It was getting a Goosebumps book, Magic Eye book, and something that wasn't book related.
I missed the Scholastic Book Fair. It was so much fun to go and do that. And it also, I was thinking about Goosebumps last night, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I read some of these on the Book It program, which was the Pizza Hut. Read as many
yes.
books as you can, and you might get a free personal pan pizza, which as an adult feels like a little bit of a ripoff, but
Right? I mean, considering they were probably like $5 anyway, they weren't that expensive. They want
right.
you to read 100 books, and they're like, here you go, little tiny pizza for you. But as kids, we loved it. Yeah. So,
Yeah, totally.
Was that like a punch card? I can't remember what it was. It was something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Did anyone ever participate in the accelerated reader program?
No.
Don't think so.
Okay. So they had books, a list of books. So it wasn't every book. There was specific books, and there were a lot that you would read, and then you would go on a computer in the library and take a quiz on what you read. And it wasn't like a huge quiz, just basically spot checking. Did you actually read the book? And then you would get points from that. And similar to Book It, like as you would earn points, you would get prizes. So I was a dork. I loved like reading those and then going to take the quizzes and then getting my prizes.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it, I think I did do that. Just not a lot, just like a couple books, and I was like, this is too much reading.
Are these prizes really worth it?
Right, for an eraser.
There were a few where I just wanted the points because certain books had higher point levels. So I would take the quiz even if I didn't read it just to see if I could guess the context and storyline. You'd be surprised how many I actually like passed. just just by guessing. I was like, this is probably not how they intended the program to go.
Yeah, it's like aliens for breakfast. What could that be about?
Magic. Oh, that's funny. So I believe Goosebumps was actually some of the Goosebumps books were actually part of that program. So I actually read a lot of Goosebumps when they were being released. And now, how many of you actually read them as they were coming out?
I don't know if I kept track of that. It was more like, oh, there's one. Let's look at it. Like, because how would you know back then when they were coming out? Like, where would you get them? Is my question.
Well, I think like Gary said, Scholastic having them at the book fairs, the new ones would come to the book fair or be released at the book fairs. But also, I was the nerd that lived in the library. So I would see the new books coming out because I was constantly paying attention to the shelves.
Yep.
Did I mention I was a nerd?
couple times. Yeah, I remember the library being my real experience. Like whenever I was a kid, I owned maybe 3 of them, but I read most of them through rental.
Yeah. My cousin actually ended up getting all of them or most of them, and I think I just went through the collection and started reading them that way. But it was all sporadic; they weren't in order. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I ended up doing it.
Yeah, fortunately, there's not a lot of continuity, so
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like anthology, right? It's not. They're not all. It's all different characters and different people and all that.
right.
But
I think there are people who are Goosebumps scholars, if you can call it that, who have gone through to find the Easter eggs within episodes that tie the worlds together. But I think as a general whole, they were, really they're able to be standalone pieces.
Mhm. Yeah, clearly there are some super fans because there's a whole Goosebumps wiki which has way more information than it should.
They have like birth dates and of characters. I'm like, how'd you even get that? I don't think that's in the book.
Right? Like the alignment of characters and creatures. Like in Monster Blood, it says that the Monster Blood alignment is evil, and we had a whole debate over whether that's true or not. And yeah, there's a lot of time dedicated to this franchise.
And I still stand on that debate that Monster Blood is not evil
Mm,
because it didn't discriminate.
yeah,
Yeah, like it's a slime that's just like it's like a Cookie Monster slime, like nom nom nom, I eat everything. It wasn't like, oh, you're a good person, I'm gonna eat you, but you're a bad witch and I'm not gonna eat you. No, the slime's like, I eat everything and everybody. I eat balloon, I eat lamp. So is it evil or is it just hungry?
yeah. Monster Blood's just hungry. Give it a break.
It's just hungry. And it doesn't like airplane food.
No.
Does anybody?
so is that the same as like the movie The Stuff? You guys ever seen that?
Um. Well, I mean, it's very similar to the Blob.
Or The Blob? Yeah, I guess any of those are the same kind of storyline, right? Where
Yeah.
you stay away from it, or otherwise it will consume you.
But I think the blob was supposed to be a creature monster.
Yeah.
Like in terms of not good, it's the antagonist, the villain.
Mhm.
And Monster Blood, I guess, technically is kind of like a villain, but in the book, it really wasn't. It was the witch who was the villain. Monster Blood was just the agent that was like growing.
Yeah. The book's called Monster Blood. Maybe it's the hero.
I like this. I
Plot
like this
twist.
spin on that. So, do any of you remember the books enough to have a favorite, or was there one that just memorably stuck out to you?
Anything with Slappy.
I can't take that name seriously.
Slappy the dummy. I love that
Slap
guy.
Happy, he just bitch slaps everyone he comes across.
Is that Night of the Living Dummy? Is that what that is?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, because I watched one of those or a couple of episodes last night from the '90s TV show, and oh yeah, it took me back. That theme music, that intro, dun 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 dun,
When it
is
gets to the
great.
dog that does the
Oh,
it cracks me every time.
But they were able to create an iconic association, right? Like you hear the song, any of the 90s kids who watched it, you hear it and it's like goosebumps.
Yep.
Like you could be somewhere completely different, hear that, and know that is goosebumps.
It's true. Yeah. For me, like Stay Out of the Basement is a big one that I remember as a kid. Another one that's more obscure and we won't get to for a number of months is The Barking Ghost, which I really liked.
The titles are definitely fun, like Say Cheese and Die.
Say Cheese and Die. That's the one I was actually just gonna bring up. I just watched that one last night as well. And did you know who was in that? Who a young Ryan Gosling, right? Like that was crazy. I was like, hey, what is he doing in this? And then their 90s haircuts.
Oh yeah.
Just it's crazy. Yeah, that was a good episode. I mean, they're all entertaining. Do you guys like the 90s ones more than the like the newer stuff?
I haven't read the newer stuff and I don't know if we'll ever go that far, but maybe.
To Infinity and Beyond.
All right.
I liked the new Goosebumps film with Jack Black.
I did like that, yeah. That's my only current Goosebumps knowledge.
I would say that is a better iteration of Goosebumps than any of the TV episodes that occurred in the
Yeah,
90s.
yeah. I like both of the movies. They're pretty good.
It was fun. It was delivered well. It had the comedy that you kind of get in the books, the sarcasm, the whiny protagonist children, and like it did have a little bit of spook element. I really think that they were able to capture the spirit of Goosebumps as it was written.
I agree 100%. And just as an adult who, when I saw those, I hadn't been thinking about Goosebumps, I hadn't been rereading Goosebumps. And I thought that both of the movies held up reasonably well.
Even that slappy happy dummy.
Bitch slap happy dummy.
It's slappy.
What did you tell us your favorite,
I
Ashley?
did not. I haven't read any of them. I'm just kidding. Um, Actually, I would say my number one favorite Goosebumps is always going to be the first book, Welcome to Dead House. That is the book where they went in on the horror more than any of the other ones. He started it a little bit scarier. People reacted to it, so he had to tone down the horror a little bit after that. So for me, I think Welcome to Dead House reflects his original intention best, and I just really fucking like the story. It stuck with me enough where, like, anytime I move to a new place, I'm like, are my neighbors dead? Is this like, am I living in a ghost town of, or it wasn't even ghosts? It's what? Living Dead. They're basically zombies.
Mhm.
So imagine that, me liking a zombie story.
Shocking.
It is a really good one.
As long as there's not too many of them.
But yeah, I really enjoyed that. I was a little pissed as a kid and even as an adult with the dog.
Yeah, that was where he pushed it a little too far. That's probably where the letter started. Don't mess with dog.
Yeah. I think it was honestly the death. He did go in on describing quite a bit when they push spoiler alert for those who haven't listened to or read what are we now, 30-year-old book. When they push the tree in the cemetery and the sun goes through, it describes the melting of the faces. It describes the people dying and the bones and the everything. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Probably for kids, that might be a little much, especially to put in schools. And I think that's might be where the problem was. If this was just at bookstores or something else, but like it's being pushed through Scholastic, it's being pushed through libraries at elementary schools. So people reacted like, that's too much. And for me, I'm like, that's not enough.
Well, at that time, Ashley, weren't you like also exposed to like horror movies that were rated R while reading your Goosebumps?
That is not a secret. It has been discussed many times on this podcast.
Yes, I was. I like how he has to specify that we're rated R. Yes, I was watching Hellraiser and Nightmare on Elm Street. So yes, I could stomach horror a little better. But if I hadn't grown up with kind of the horror genre being a part of my like lifestyle, those probably would have been a little bit more intense for me.
So was Goosebumps maybe like for breakfast and then like Freddy for dinner kind of thing, or at late at night?
Maybe.
I'll say Freddy was
I don't
probably
know.
like a snack.
I was gonna say Freddy was a snack. I think Hellraiser was the main entree.
Sounds right.
Freddy's a snack. Yeah, he is.
Hell yeah.
Oh my gosh. So like for you guys when you were a kid, did they scare you? Was Goosebumps like a thing that you had to put down, or was it like, yeah, it was fine?
I had to put it in the freezer like Joey did with The Shining in Friends. No, I'm kidding. No, honestly though, that first book, like you were saying, it was pretty creepy, but you had to start it that way. You couldn't start a series called Goosebumps and not try to freak the hell out of somebody. So that one was a pretty good one too. I actually liked that one. But for the other ones, no, I don't think I really got too freaked out.
Same. I kind of like you. I grew up with R-rated movies and stuff because my mom didn't understand the rating system, so she just let me rent whatever I wanted to. So a lot of the scary stuff about Goosebumps came off as campy and fun, and I think it still does.
I feel like my mom understood the rating system. She just didn't care. She expected us to monitor ourselves, which I'm not sure if that's like the wisest idea. She's like, if there's sex, cover your eyes, okay? And it's just like, really? As she leaves the room, it's like, you really think we're gonna cover her eyes?
But just your eyes, not your ears. Like you can hear it, you can't see it.
Oh, you could hear it.
Oh,
And it's,
Lord.
you know how traumatizing that is
Yeah.
when you can't see, but you could hear.
Yeah, that makes it so much worse. We were
Yeah.
told to plug our ears and cover our eyes, which was hard to do when you have little hands.
Stick
Yeah,
the
no,
thumb in each ear and
that's,
then bring the fingers across.
Yeah.
yep. He knows. He's got it down to an art. And for me, I was just like, yeah, I'm not bothering. Whatever. I was that bad child. And we all wonder why I'm a heathen now. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Actually, what I did, because that was back in the VCR days, if there was something super adult, I was actually a good kid. I would just forward through it. And my sister thought I was a nerd. She's like, "You're really forwarding that?" I'm like, "It's fine."
See, I was I have a brother who's 7 years older than me, and so like whatever he watched, I watched, and so it wasn't we didn't fast forward through stuff. Now, if my parents were there, they'd ask me to get up and go out of the room or something like that, but it would have to be pretty extreme for something like that, which is very different from my 6-year-old nephew now. We took him to the drive-in to see the Goonies, and there's a part in there. Do you remember when Chunk is in the with the ice cream and the stiff? My sister, like, told him to turn his head away while he was in there with the stiff, and I'm like, "Really? Like, is that's where you draw the line?" I'm like, it was kind of a weird for me. I was like, "I don't understand that." And he was like, "Hey, that little girl over there is watching it." Because when he turned her head, he looked at the little girl that was, sitting
She's
next to
staring
her.
at it.
Yeah, and I was like, "Yeah, man, that's messed up." Like, he dresses up as, the Grim Reaper for Halloween. Like, I think he's okay to see maybe a dead body, a frozen dead body. Maybe, I don't know. I don't have kids, so I'm not sure where that line is drawn.
I think every parent's different. I don't like. I'm not gonna let my kids watch adult content. Like, that's just the thing. Outside of that, I'm not too. And torture, they don't need to watch that. They're young. Torture films, torture things, that doesn't need to be a thing. Which is interesting because they watch John Wick, and there are some questionable scenes in there where I find myself thinking maybe this wasn't the best parenting choice.
Great movie, though.
Yeah.
Fantastic movies. Just like some of those scenes, it's like, oh, yeah, they should not have just seen that. But here we are. A trauma bond together.
There you go. Brings you closer.
So, one thing we were talking about, which ones do you remember? And, say Cheese and Die. The other thing I also remembered was what was the other one? Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, right?
Yeah.
That series as well. So I would kind of alternate back and forth kind of thing, but I don't think any of them ever really scared me. It was just kind of like something interesting to read, but I mean, it's not something that if I read it at night that I would have trouble sleeping or anything like that. But it was fun, like you said. Like Gary says, campy, and that's what you love out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like Scary Stories might have been a little darker, but
A little.
it's been a while since I've read one. I don't have a Scary Stories podcast. I'm sorry.
Scary stories to tell in the dark. Like literally the spider that embeds in her face and all the baby spiders come out and like crawl all over her. A little scary.
That's fair.
Those were terrifying.
The Del Toro movie was pretty haunting for proof that it doesn't have to be R-rated to be incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was good too. I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
I did like the movie. I like the books. I actually, what I really loved about the books was the art. The
Yeah.
stories were, they're short, they're well done, but the art, like that really got to me. They were simple, but like fucked. They were scary.
That's what draw me in first. I was like, "What is that?" Like, I need to know what that is, and I need them to tell me all
Yep.
about it. And Goosebumps too. I mean, Goosebumps had a lot of different art too, with their style, which brought you in, and just that green color, just like, oh yes.
Goosebumps
So
green.
Goosebumps Green.
Goosebumps
It has
green,
been
right?
referenced. It will be referenced again.
It's a goosebumps green.
Yep.
What color's your car? Goosebumps green.
Goosebumps green.
Oh, new life goal unlocked.
Goosebumps Gary is gonna have a goosebumps green car. I'm here for it. I want to see
Sweet.
pictures.
Yeah,
Do
absolutely.
it. Yeah, I think that RL pushed the boundaries on as much as he could, like, killing the beloved family pets, but not in a gruesome way. So, like, it still will slide and go into the libraries, but like still traumatize children. Like, oh no, it's a zombie now too. But he tried, but I feel like that was like a gateway. Goosebumps was gateway Goosebumps. It was a gateway to elevated horror. So you have like Goosebumps, and then you have scary stories to tell in the dark, and then you had more scary stories to tell in the dark, and then you have Stephen King, and it's like I'm sure there's others in between, but we're seeing the spectrum there, the range, and obviously Stephen King was not for children, but I don't think Scary Stories was either. Like they marketed it towards us, but I don't know. Reading that as an adult, I'm not sure that was really for kids.
Right.
I'll agree with that.
Or teenagers.
Yeah, and speaking of teenagers, RL had a whole second series called Fear Street, which was more catered towards the teen crowd.
I didn't read those.
Me
So
neither.
did you read?
Mm.
Okay.
I know Netflix has like 3 movies on there that are, all tied together and stuff. A lot of people liked them. I started watching them. I don't know that I've finished any of them, but yeah, not just because I didn't like it, just because I don't know, didn't have time to finish it or something. But yeah, those are definitely on Netflix.
I have a lot of those.
I was just thinking of the Black Phone movie recently. I don't know. Have you guys seen that
Good
one yet?
movie, loved it.
So yeah, that one, because it is about kids and everything, it kind of gave me vibes of those stories of what we were talking about. But I would say obviously we're talking about a range of what's appropriate for kids. This one's like a step up, but it's still like I feel like kids that watch it like would understand and like it because of the way it's done. Like it's scary, but it's also like I don't know. I feel like if I was a kid watching it, I'd be like, "Oh man, this is really cool." Because there's parts in it. There's like ghosts, and it's like, are you talking to the ghosts that are kids? And it's def. If you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth watching. And I feel like it gives some of those vibes of these books.
Absolutely. I could see that completely.
And Ethan Hawke is really good.
The Disney Plus is actually going to be releasing a Goosebumps revamp
Yeah.
series in October. And I'm kind of curious because at face value, you're like, Disney? Goosebumps? But isn't like at first it sounds weird, but then I think about it and I'm like, well, isn't RL Goosebumps the Disney of horror? So,
Yeah, that's a good way to put
yeah.
it.
So maybe it actually goes hand in hand. And not to mention Disney's really branched out of its original branding to encompass things. But I'm curious to see how it's going to be handled.
Yeah, I'm hoping it also actually gives Disney Plus the rights to the classic Goosebumps series because I'm tired of watching half of them in subpar YouTube quality.
I think from what I read, it's not going to be story for story. They're
Yeah,
going to incorporate parts of the stories. So
cool.
we'll see. I mean, I'm curious to see what Disney does with it because it could Disney something like they either knock it out of the park or they don't. There's not like usually a middle ground. So I'm hoping that they slay it.
Do you do you guys think that now they're coming out with? I mean, obviously they came out with the Jack Black movie and all that. There's the change in the generation, right? Like it's the newer generation. Do you think that it's going to lose some of its luster for what it was? Because I mean, these stories were '90s stories, right? These were written, you know, back in the '90s. So, do you think that it'll change if they'll add things to it? Obviously, there weren't a lot of cell phones around, like stuff like that. Is that gonna change it? Do you think?
I don't think so because one thing that I've really experienced is that they talk about Super Mario World or they talk about um, VCRs or whatever, but for the most part, these stories are pretty timeless where they're set, and it's all about the conversation between people. Like that stuff still reads, and it still feels like a family sitting down to dinner and having typical family conversations. And I mean, maybe kids are a little less bratty or bratty in a different way now than they were when these books were written. But yeah, I think it'll still hold pretty tight.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it a bit on the few episodes we've done, but like I've watched the awful quality YouTube ones with my kids, and they're of this generation, right? They are of not the Goosebumps generation, but the current modern one. And so to them, I'm watching does it sink or swim with them? Even just revisiting the old stuff that, like, let's be honest, it doesn't really hold to the test of time. They're fun, they're nostalgic, but to me, it's like, oof. And honestly, they don't notice.
Hmm.
They like it. They're like, ooh, can we watch another one? So I think it's gonna do okay. I think it's gonna do fine with this generation, especially if they can connect to the current generation's expectation too. Because if they can connect to it in its low quality Wish version, I think it'll connect on a higher, more modern type of scale. I don't know though.
And speaking of modern, like one thing I just thought of is I would love to watch like a Goosebumps series if they had like the writers from Modern Family, just that whole vibe. Like that would be amazing. I would love to have that kind of comedy and that kind of wit in there. That's something that I would watch for sure.
I think I could do that for a couple episodes.
Yeah, because then it's funny, but then it's like, oh wait, now they're dead. Oh no.
And honestly, I'm curious to see how hard Disney goes. Are they going to keep it on the more kid friendly? Because this isn't in a library, this isn't in a scholastic book fair. Or are they going to try and hit the harder, more middle ground so that it gets a bigger demographic reach?
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that they reach more for the middle demographic than, pulling all the punches. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. I mean, now that Disney is branching out and putting some R-rated content and TV mature stuff on their service, it does open up. I don't think Goosebumps is ever going to be R-rated, but it does open up the door for more of a PG-13 entry.
Well, those are different types of goosebumps.
Ooh.
So, oh, hey, so John just shakes his head at me. I mean, yeah, I think we're on Disney for a moment. Are we going to get our podcast shut down because they're saying Disney? The Mouse Mafia is going to come
They
after
better
us.
not. I'll
So
kick their ass.
they have horror-esque stuff on Disney, especially like for kids. Have you guys seen The Secret of Sulphur Springs?
Mm-mm.
No.
Okay, that deals with ghosts
Oh
and
yeah,
like a
yeah, yeah.
haunted mansion, and like it gets a little spooky. There's like some pretty evil, like malevolent spirits out there. And yeah, it's a little spooky for kids. Like they did it well. And so seeing The Secret of Sulphur Springs and how they executed that, I'm hoping that they're able to capture that vibe and put it into Goosebumps, because then I think it actually will do really well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it very well could. And let's not sell Disney short. I mean, Haunted Mansion is one of their best rides, and it somehow manages to be fun and a little dark, but still keep it kid friendly.
Yeah, and before you came on, we were talking a little bit about Werewolf by Night,
Yeah.
and that's fairly new, and I enjoyed it. I mean, black and white, it plays homage to the
Yep.
classics, but also um, kind of new in a way. But it was fun. I mean, there's only one episode, but yeah, I mean they're kind of going for it. That's part of like
Mhm.
Marvel, which I thought was kind of unique, kind of different.
Yeah, I really admired the dedication to that one.
Yeah, it was fun.
The kid in me just kind of laughs a little when I hear Disney and horror, but I think it would be amazing if Disney became a powerhouse in horror films.
Oh man, that would be trippy.
Yeah, they could though.
They could.
All of the stories that they've told, there are the original versions of those
Mhm.
stories, right? Like Snow White, right? That's not how it goes. That's not how it originally is, right? Like they could go that route. They absolutely could, like, yeah, this is the kids one and this is the one for
Yeah.
adults. Because yeah, all of those stories are really, really I haven't read all of them, but I know a couple of them were just out there, right?
Mhm.
So they could do that. I mean, they have the rights for all of it, right?
They need to do adult Disney. Not that kind of adult Gary.
Aw.
He's looking around like, huh?
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people forget that Disney once owned Dimension Films. So, a lot of, like Scream and a lot of those movies used to have the old, I'm pretty sure the VHS had the Buena Vista little sticker on the bottom of the tape that you had to
I
cut to
think
get the
so. Yeah,
VHS.
I
And
think so.
it's crazy. Disney has a checkered past with what they, I mean, they at one point released an Insane Clown Posse album. So, like they done some stuff. Disney as the parent company tends to shy away from certain things, and it'd be nice if they would branch out a little bit.
I mean, they branched out to Deadpool, so if they can do Deadpool, they can do death.
Hey, if you're gonna get Marvel, you have to have Deadpool, and if without Deadpool, I don't want to live. I don't know where I was going with that, but like when you said Disney and horror, I automatically went back to way back to season one when Kevin's like, my favorite scary movie's Hocus Pocus. Motherfucker, that's not scary,
For Kevin, it is.
Kevin.
Um, I Kevin, I I don't know. Disney has the resources. It has the talent pool. It has the everything you could need at its fingertips. If it wanted to, I'm sure it could kill it in the horror genre. Whether they choose to pursue that or not, it's a different story. I feel like they're kind of testing their toes in the water by doing Goosebumps. And I'm not mad at that. Like any kid that was of the 90s and early 2000s, Goosebumps is your jam. And even nowadays, Goosebumps is still in the library and kids read them. So there's other scary stuff out there now, but that is still present.
Well, and they're bringing everything back from that was in the 90s, right? Like that's kind of what's going on right now. I mean, the new Fresh Prince, right?
Yeah.
Bel Air, right? Like so there's all kinds of 90s stuff coming back, and of course Goosebumps is going to be part of that, right? So, yeah, my only hesitation is that, Disney tries to, make it for a broad audience so that they can get the most eyes on it as possible. And that's where it's like, ooh, I don't know if that's going to make the people who want specific things, enjoy it. Is it going to be that horror vibe, right? Like, is that going to be something that horror fans clamor to, or is it going to be another kind of like, okay, this is like a Marvel movie but with some ghosts and stuff? I'll still watch it.
That's the beauty of Goosebumps, though. Even though it was scary to an extent or supposed to be spooky, it wasn't really horror. Like it wasn't supposed to be horror that terrifies you. It was just spooky and makes you a little uncomfortable, kind of like the campfire tells, right? Like you're telling a
Yeah.
little story around the campfire and like, ooh, it's a little scary, but mostly it's fun. And I think that's the beauty of it is that no matter what, it is not a hard. I'm going to say this very carefully. If you're going to test horror and you're going to test spooky, Goosebumps is the guinea pig to do it on because it does have enough lightness in it to offset some of this spookier, kind of more uncomfortable stuff. Because we've talked about it, like in ours, Gary, is that there's stuff tackled in there that's just not, it's not just horror. There's a reoccurring theme in a lot of these books of bullies. Bullying is a very big thing that's present. And I actually kind of challenge that the real villains in all of these books that he writes about are the bullies.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we definitely think that RL was working through some stuff as he was writing these books, but yeah, bullies are a big recurring theme, and also bratty siblings. There's a lot of repetitive features, but it maybe we'll get tired of it by book 63 or whatever. But it's still fun for the time being.
I think it's funny that you bring that up with the bully thing because the say cheese and die episode, yeah, there's these kids that try to steal the camera away, and you can tell that automatically that when they enter the screen, they're laughing and being bullies and trying to take it from them, and then same thing, the scarecrow one, right? This kid tries to jump out and
Mm.
scare these kids that because I don't know if you guys remember that one, but these kids go to visit their grandparents, and there's a scarecrow that basically comes alive, but there's this like other kid that whenever these two come to visit their grandparents, always tries to come out and scare them, um, kind of trying to be a bully. But then obviously they're siblings, the thing that you were saying, and the siblings, fight and everything. So there's always, I feel like, yeah, that's a very strong, it's a good, something good to use. You can use that. And that's what's so great about them is it's, you can just throw a different spin on it each time, but it's still like, oh, my big sister's or my little brother's a jerk and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
He used a lot of common tropes for sure. I mean, we had the parents who are either literally gone, traveling, or just not present. They're negligent. And so they're able to exist in these really awful situations without their parents knowing because their parents just really aren't paying attention, or they're not there. They're like, here, I'm going to drop you off with this deaf aunt that you've never met, and you're going to chill with her for a few weeks. Okay, cool. Have fun. Bye.
Well, and I feel like half of that did happen to us in the 90s. Like, I mean, we were always outside by ourselves while our parents were at
Mhm.
work during the summer. Don't come in the house because whatever, we don't want you in there. We want you outside to play, your kids, go do this, go do that. At least for me, because, summertime, I mean, my dad did work across the street, so he had his coworkers kind of spy on us all the time, make sure we were outside, but there were times we snuck in the house, but I mean, it's just like they say about Generation X. We were, the last ones to play outside, the last ones to freaking drink from a hose and all of that fun shit. So, like,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's just something that us '90s. I mean, since it was written in the '90s, that we can all just freaking remember.
We were the final Goonies
Fuck
generation.
yeah,
It's true. Yeah.
Goonies for
It's
life.
funny. It's funny that you say that because that is the thing that probably wouldn't translate to nowadays is the fact that the kids are by themselves all the time. Like I remember my grandma used to work like 5 minutes from a mall, so she would just let me go to the mall and walk around all day by myself. I mean, I was raised by a building, and
Is this why you like to shop?
perhaps, perhaps. But yeah, I mean, it made me who I am too. Because I remember they had bookstores there. I would go look at Goosebumps books. I would go to the video store, look at movies, like all the toy store. Obviously, all the things that I love were there, and it's a big part of my upbringing.
Was it KB Toys?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I love KB Toys. Oh,
I started shopping there. I eventually worked there. I eventually
yes.
was the assistant manager there, and then we went
Oh,
out of
nice.
business. So,
Yep. Mine was
Oh.
Suncoast Video. I was a big video person, always
yep,
messing with the video stores.
yep. That's
Yep.
I was there. I worked there too.
Nice.
I worked a lot of places in this mall because they kept going out of business.
Yes.
Radio killed the video star. Sorry. You know what I did like about Goosebumps? I feel like RL was actually ahead of his time a bit because he did include female protagonists, which especially in adventure stories, and this is like a spooky adventure story kind of world. we you didn't get a lot of that, right? Like you had Nancy Drew off doing her little mysteries, but she's still described as wearing like little pin or what are they hoop circle dresses and in her little sensible flats, and like you picture this cute little girl in a dress running around solving mysteries. But then you come to RL's world and his first book is actually a female protagonist. And so he's coming out the gate with a strong female character who is there to support her family and save the day. And I think that was pretty fucking cool because when it comes to horror, especially in the 80s and 90s, what do we have? We have the helpless, oh my God, I can't do this. I need someone to save me. Please help me, Mr. Lumberjack Man. Um,
What were you reading?
I'm talking about movies,
Oh, okay.
but like the slasher films. But then you have RL who's like, here is an 11, 12-year-old female protagonist that is scared, but she's facing fears and saving the day. And I thought that was pretty cool.
I agree. And he writes that one's first person perspective as a female, and he nails it. That's the crazy part. He's so good at putting himself into the mind of a child that you almost do wonder if a child is like is it like the artist who drew for Bambi where there are deer and rabbits and skunks in the studio? Was he just asking like his nieces like how would you channel this?
How would you do this?
Yeah.
Or he's a 12-year-old girl stuck in 100-year-old dude's body. No, I'm just kidding. He's not that
I'm like,
old.
why is he
He
gotta be
was
100? Holy cow.
Come on. He was 80 in the 90s.
Didn't he always look old though? Like the picture on the cover, like it's like this guy doesn't age,
Mm-mm.
but he's stuck at a really old age.
He looked just like Jack Black.
A lot of people write based on like trauma, but also based on like times of their life that affected them the most, times that they remember vividly, and that may have been it for him, right? Like when he was, the times that were most vivid for him were those times when he was a 12, 13-year old, like Stand By Me, that kind of thing. Like
Mhm.
those kinds of situations, and that's, some writers are just like that. They can deal with that time of life really well, and some writers can't, right? And because maybe they just had a really boring childhood, maybe, like I feel like that it really does depend on your upbringing, as well as, I mean, you can channel your own kids, your own nieces and nephews and all of that, and see how they live their lives and write through that. But I think that what made his so successful was his ability to filter it through his own experiences, right?
Absolutely.
Look at you being all smarty pants.
It's, I mean, that's what I've learned, that just from a couple writing classes. Just there's, and it makes sense. I mean, write what you know, right? Right, and if you write enough, people will start to see a pattern, and they're like, oh yeah, this dude was going through some stuff as a preteen, right? And and a lot of it's like, oh man, I wish I would have gone through and discovered some crazy stuff when I was that old, like maybe going to a haunted house, right? Like if you go to a haunted house and something happens when you're 12, like that's going to leave a mark. And when you get older, and you're probably going to write about it.
Yeah.
I really think he had a bullying problem growing up. The bullies are super violent. Like for being a series that tries to be light and focus on the ooh, spooky slime monster, like for example in Monster Blood, like the bullies pummel him and they talk about him laying on the ground in pain and he's like in tears and it's like that was a very real scene. That was very visceral and it's like that didn't come from nowhere.
Yeah.
It felt like that energy conveyed through that was a very real moment. And so it does make me wonder when I read these books and I read about the bullies and I see, or, you read about how they're treating the characters. Like, did he in fact maybe go through some of that? And this is, like you said, his outlet of writing what you know.
Yeah. Getting back at those who wronged him. Because I mean, the flip side is that he could have been a bully and he's living to regret it, but I've seen him, so I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, true.
He's not the bullying type.
It doesn't seem like.
Hey, that was body shaming him.
I'm
Face
not
shaming?
I'm RL shaming?
RL
Oh,
shaming. Is that a
you're
thing?
Stein shaming.
Stine
Stein
shaming.
shaming. No. And now I'm a bully.
Speaking of Stein, he has their books, short stories being released now, which reminds me very much of like scary stories to tell in the dark. They're called Stein Tinglers. And I didn't make it up. That's what they're called.
Very clever.
And
Yes.
I know. So like that's currently out and they're releasing those. And I think that's fun because in a generation of, and I don't mean just the generation, but like the current time we are in life, we are very immediate, short attention span kind of society currently, be with the scroll
TikTok.
mentality. Scroll mentality that I think the Stein Tinglers is kind of perfect. You're getting, even though they weren't long books to begin with, you're getting just tastes of different worlds within Goosebumps. So it's kind of fun.
That's cool. Yeah. I would be interested in checking one of those out from the library.
I love the library. I miss having the old school library checkout system though, where you pull the little card out and you
Right
write your
along.
name and the
Yeah.
date. Yeah, I love that. I miss that. Can we bring that back?
No.
Absolutely.
What?
BJ said no. I say
No.
yes. Damn it,
Technology,
BJ,
BJ.
use a dick.
technology, apps, like it's too
True,
much
but you know
work
what?
to look through paper.
Everything comes back, so we're gonna bring it back anyway.
I'd be down, but again, like this generation's gonna be like, "What is this?" I'm
How do I
sorry.
write my name? I don't know.
Where's the QR code? That's what they'll be asking.
What's
The
right?
hashtag.
Where's the scribbles? What are the scribbles? I can't read it.
Hey, hey, hey. Be nice. You are turning into Stein's bullies.
Yes, I was bullied too. It's my turn. I'm just joking.
I do like that they're still producing books. Now, whether RL's actually writing them still, that's to be debated. But the fact that they're still releasing books in the Goosebumps world and the covers have gotten kind of spooky. Like originally the art's already like that's always been great. We can all agree on that, right? Like the art's always been fantastic
Mhm.
on the Goosebump cover books. But it's definitely been evolving over time, and I enjoy looking at them. They still carry the original nostalgia of the bright colors and the monsters and the rar, but they're getting a little bit more complex, and I like them.
I remember some of the Goosebumps 2000 covers being particularly like next level. Like Cry of the Cat is just this like close up of a cat, and it's like I don't know, it's crazy. But one thing about me is that through the convention circuit, I've gotten to know Tim Jacobus, who did 61 of the 63 original book covers, and I think that the artwork is what sells the book initially. Like you read with your eyes for, well, I guess you read with your eyes the whole time, but you purchase with your eyes and then you read with your eyes also. I'm going to stop talking. What were you saying, BJ?
I ditto. I agree with what you just said.
What did I say?
You said that the artwork draws everybody in, and that's why they buy it, and that's why they read it. And that's the same for like for our generation VHS tapes, right? Same kind of situation. The artwork was everything, and that's lost on kids today because they don't know what the artwork is because it's all digital, it's all photography. It's not art. It's and with books, that's the big draw. I think I don't know for you guys that are big readers, is that something? I mean, obviously there's you're the people who the authors, right? You're drawn to specific authors, but is there a book that you've just kind of just walking down and you see the cover and you're like, wait a minute, I don't know who this is, but that cover's art is amazing.
I mean, I have semi recently gone to the kids section in like Barnes and Noble and looked at books and books that I knew the original cover art for, and I look at what the cover art is now, and it's totally different. Like, there's got to be a study that could be done on the various forms of the cover art throughout the years for the same book. What appeals at a different time and to different childhood demographics.
Right, and I think like now even with the Harry Potter books, they've got different covers than they had when they originally came out, and it's just weird to see some of the newer covers. I'm like, I don't know how that fits with this, but it just could be me because I like the originals myself. But um,
I don't know. I'm a big fan of the illustrated sets.
oh yeah, no, you're definitely you were talking about that before. Those are definitely cool, but like just to see the different covers now, it's just some of them are cool. Some of them I'm like, you could have stuck with the original and it would have been good with me. But that's just on my opinion. So
So I'm gonna naysay what BJ said that the artwork is less important.
I didn't say it was
For
less
kids,
important.
it's not as an emphasized for kids. They don't focus on it as much. And I disagree because we're in a very visual society right now. So kids actually gravitate to the bright, colorful whatevers. Comic books, graphic novels, those are all on the rise. The artistry within video games, the those are on the rise. Like the apparel, everything, like art is on everywhere. Murals being made because we are consuming visually more so than we ever have before. And so I think that art is on a high demand. And that's just like all like just walking through kids' aisles of bookstores, like you said, Gary, like the covers, I think are way more detailed than they were back in the day, even for little kids, because it's like we need to give them as much to look at as possible because we are so visual these days. Even the Goosebumps covers, like looking at the progression from when they first came out, they were always good, but there's a lot more in them now. There's more layers, more elements, because people are so visually demanding. I need to see a lot of things all at once. So, yeah, I think the covers are important. For adult books, you don't get as much because the idea is that you're reading more and looking less. And I mean, it's all using your Jeepers, Creepers, Peepers, but they assume adults don't care about art as much, which is not true. We like art.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I still remember jumping back to Nancy Drew. I still remember that there was a Nancy Drew Hardy Boys crossover book where they were
yes,
like teamed up, and on the book cover they were being chased by a monster truck, and I'm like, I gotta read this.
yep,
I bought it and didn't like it, but I had to read it based on the cover, and that's
absolutely.
just you really do cover art is everything in my opinion, and I don't know how kids today feel about it, but
I mean, it's gotta be it's a thing.
yeah.
It's a demographic thing. You go to R.L. Stine's site, he is now producing comics and graphic novels. So he's got a series called Stuff of Nightmares, and actually the art on that is different than the book series. It actually is scarier looking, and it actually looks like horror. And so for me, it's like, yeah, the demographics there. It's just a matter of, I mean, I think there's a study done on how many comics are being produced a year, and it is exponentially higher every year because we are like consume, consume, consume all the images. And yeah, I'd be curious to read Stuff of Nightmares. I'm probably gonna order that, and then we'll do a follow-up conversation on how did you like it?
My question would be, how does he decide which art to go with? Like you said, it's been changing and evolving and getting scarier in some aspects. And like what artists are you choosing and why, right? Like it's because that relates to the stories as well, right? Like it's got to. And so I think that's something that's interesting to think about. It's like, well, the covers have gotten scarier and more detailed, so does that mean that the stories are the same or as scary as well? So
I don't know nowadays. I feel like, and I could be misremembering what I was told, but I'm going to say it with confidence. I feel like Tim Jacobus and R.L. Stine were placed together by Scholastic, and it was sort of a one hand helping the other type thing, as opposed to, like RL knew Tim and was like, I like his art, I'm going to bring him on to do my book art. But they were a great pairing, and they sold a shit ton of books together. So nowadays I don't know if it's still as dictated by the publisher or how that works.
I think in most cases, back then and even now, I think RL had an unique-ish scenario where he could choose his covers. I think most authors that get picked up by a publishing company don't get to choose their cover. They submit their manuscripts, and the publisher is the one that determines the cover art and the book title, like not determining the title, but like the font used, and all of the branding gets determined by the publisher, not the writer. RL had a bit of a unique scenario because it sounds like he had say, he had a little bit of creative control, but just like screenwriters, authors don't usually get say on the finished product in terms of branding, covers, stuff like that. That's determined later by like marketing and art departments. And so you may send it to your person and say, here's what it looks like. And maybe some people are given a little bit of control where they can push back a bit, but that's not typically what that's like. Same with comic books. How they're done, they're pieced out. You have the writer, then it gets sent to the person who's going to draw, and then ink, and then color, and then the cover artist is someone completely different. And so it's like a merge of different things that then produce this product out, unless you're a self-publisher, which I don't believe R.L. Stine was. If you're a self-publisher, you control it from beginning to end.
No, RL was working for big companies back in the 80s, because I had like a GI Joe choose your own adventure book that he wrote. So I mean, he definitely uh, was not a new guy on the street whenever these came around.
And that might have been why he had more creative control,
Could be.
because the higher you go and the bigger your work, you do get a little bit more. Kind of like J.K. Rowling. When they made the Harry Potter films, typically you don't get an author who's going to have creative control on a film when the rights are purchased. But because it's like your series is so
yeah.
huge and they want it so badly, JK's like, okay, you can make it, but I get creative control. So definitely depends where you're at in your career journey, and that tends to dictate how much control you have in the process. But most authors, that's not usually a thing. And some just don't care. They're like, here's my writing, go make it so. Here's my story. Pay me.
The other side of Goosebumps that we haven't really even touched on in our podcast is how much of a merchandising monster this series became. Like, they had tape dispensers. They had like a tape dispenser that was like the hand from Stay Out of the Basement, and you could cut the tape on like the fingernail. I remember Taco Bell had kids meal toys in the 90s for Goosebumps. Like there was so much stuff. There were Pogs. I mean, all the 90s
Yes.
buzzwords were somehow tied to Goosebumps.
I have
And
Goosebumps pogs
yeah,
still.
That's so cool.
I have a few myself.
Yes.
I feel like we need a Goosebumps inspired like 3Haunted shirt. That would be cool.
That would be cool. You should do it.
That would be cool. Let's find somebody to do it. And it has to have, the Goosebumps screen because without it, it's
Of
just not.
course.
Yeah.
Is it even Goosebumps if there
No,
isn't the Goosebumps screen?
no.
I don't think so. Back in the day, we relied on the library catalog and the Scholastic newsletter to see what Goosebumps was out. Nowadays, you can go to R.L. Stine's website and see everything being pushed out. If you think it was a merchandise machine back then, boy, oh boy, you should check it out now.
Yeah. Every time you say art, I think of this stupid video with this little kid talking about how they went to a museum and they were penises. And they saw all kinds of different shapes of the penis. It's funny. They're just talking about the shapes of penises. And the mom's like, "You're never going to the museum again." And the kid's like, "No, but it's art."
Why does John Thomas have dick on the brain?
I don't
Okay,
know.
so
It's BJ's fault. I'm just kidding.
I'm just sitting here, man.
I just had to blame somebody.
it's someone's fault. It's Goosebump Gary's.
Guilty.
So, do we have any final thoughts before we wrap it up? That does not sound right after we just got done talking about dicks.
Mm.
Any final thoughts?
I'm excited to rediscover Goosebumps and also with my nephew because he's 6 years old. So I feel like this is like the perfect time to get into it again. So that's exciting.
I think that'll be cool. What about you, John Thomas? Any final thoughts?
Yes, I think Disney, if you're listening, which you probably are,
Don't
listen
get
to
us
us
shut down.
and no. This is a good thing. Listen to us and start your own horror division and make some more stuff for adults. We're out there. So we just want to see it. Let's do it.
We want to see horror, Disney. Let's see what you got. What about you, Goosebumps Gary?
I don't know. I think my final thoughts are listen to our podcast to find out more.
Well played. And where can they find our podcast, Gary?
Well, we haven't even officially said the name of the podcast, have we?
I was gonna say you never said the name of it at all. You guys just keep saying our podcast, hey, the podcast.
Well, God damn it, Gary.
What?
She's just trying to find all the G words to go with your name through this whole episode.
Get
Just
going,
saying.
Goosebumps Gary.
Yeah, get going. What is the name of this upcoming podcast and where can we be found?
It is called Listeners Beware, a podcast about all things Goosebumps, but you should be able to find it with just Listeners Beware. And we will be on Spotify and pending no issues, everywhere podcasts are available. So check us out.
Yeah, check us out.
Like a book from the library.
Oh, that was well played.
I only play well, Ashley.
You stumped her. She got quiet. That never happens. Good job.
Gary never makes just suggestive jokes, so that threw me off. Like, what did he say? It's always the quiet ones.
She was like buffering for a minute there. It was funny. It was great.
It's like I think my brain exploded. He made a dirty innuendo. Or I just took it that way, in which case. All right, guys. I had a great time talking about Goosebumps, and I'm excited to do a follow-up conversation to see how we feel about the series and anything else, how BJ's nephew receives the Goosebumps books, how we like the comic books. And so, yeah, this is very exciting. I really appreciate you guys coming on to talk about this.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, guys.
Heck yeah. Always a fun time with you guys.
Because we are Stella. We give people goosebumps. All right, John Thomas, do you want to bring us home?
Probably. I'm kidding. Ha ha ha. No. Thank you again, Gary, for coming on to this episode. It's been great. It was nice to meet you, and I can't wait to have you back on. And, yes, Ashley?
Well, I forgot to ask Gary, do you have any other projects you want people to tune into?
Oh, yeah. Let's rewind, flip back, edit that part.
I'll put my thing down, flip it, and reverse it.
Yeah.
All right. So, are there other projects that you can talk about?
Well, so what I do is tied to the nostalgia thing, and this is sort of the Listeners Beware podcast is sort of linked to this. Is the Wax Nostalgic Network? I'm on YouTube. I make YouTube videos. I haven't been doing it much lately because I haven't had any time or focus or follow through. And I've done several other podcasts as well that are tied into that network that all revolve around 90s and 80s things. So check out Wax Nostalgic Network.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, John Thomas, let's do it again.
You mean do it for the first time?
Yeah, whatever.
The other one never happened.
Just do it.
Thank you, Gary, for coming on and talking about Goosebumps with us. I can't wait to have you back on the next show. And BJ, of course, thank you for guest hosting with us again. Good to see your face.
Absolutely. Always happy to be here.
And thank you to all of our listeners for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And I'm your guest host, BJ Segura.
If you have any questions, comments, or concerns for BJ, please feel free to email us at 300podcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss another crazy moment.
Until next time.